Billie Eilish, Hit Me Hard and Soft, or When We Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go?
Hard and soft.
What he said.
I'm getting so many faces from you.
Fighting in the parking lot. Which one for you?
I'm going to be honest. I don't know her albums that well.
Get out of
I'm
Sorry, which is worse?
Honest
Disagreement
policy.
or indifference?
Hey, Sam Sanders here. Thank you for checking out my show. It is December, and you may have noticed that I've released a few episodes now looking back on the pop culture of this year and what it all meant. We have talked movies and TV and tech and music, and this episode, more music. And I want to go bigger than just this year because I think that we are in this big transformational moment for popular music. I think over the last few years, a lot has changed. And most likely the way that you listen to music today, it is completely different than how you listened 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago. So this episode, we're going to take stock of that. The biggest recent trends in pop music and the music industry and where it's all headed. To have this conversation, I brought in two experts, two heavy hitters, two multi-hyphenates whose names are really fun to say together. Diallo and LUXXURY. I will let them intro themselves in more detail, but for starters, know that they are music industry experts and creatives themselves, and they host one of the best music podcasts around. It's called One Song. LUXXURY, Diallo, hello.
Hello.
Can that be
intro.
a luxury brand? LUXXURY Diallo.
Wow.
Couture.
Sam Sanders is not bad, by the way, with the alliteration.
Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah,
This is great.
thanks for being here.
You finally paid our rate.
Yo, we had
we're
to
thankful.
have a few pledge drives to get it. Before we get to it, I want you both just to describe yourselves the best way you should and can for our audience, because y'all do so much. You got the podcast One Song, but you're also just creatives, industry folks. What's your elevator pitch for who y'all are?
I'm the black one in glasses. He's the white one in glasses. And we're roughly the same age. And I will say real quick that One Song came about because we during the pandemic, we would, we knew each other through mutual people. I would call him and I would say, hey, I saw your TikTok video about this. Were you aware of that? And half the time he'd be like, yes, I am aware of that. But did you know that this is connected to that via the person who produced that song? And like we would stay on the phone
This endless
for 2
rabbit
hours.
hole, shared rabbit hole, deep
that's
dive.
cute.
Yeah.
We're both dads who were like ignoring our families at that point. It's like, no, I gotta wrap this up.
It was
I
the
know
pandemic, to be fair. Everyone wanted to ignore their
But
families
even
just
after
for a moment.
Even after the mask came off, and
Yeah.
we were still on the phone for 2 hours, and so at some point, someone approached us about doing a podcast, and then we started doing that. And what we've found is that there's a huge community of people who just really love music and want to talk about music and how it gets made. And we have access to some of the stems, which are the parts of the song. And so some of your favorite songs, some songs you may not even be your favorite. You may have heard them way too much.
Yeah.
But by playing the individual parts and talking about how it got created, you can hear these songs in a new way.
Oh, yeah.
Like I have a much greater appreciation. Not that I've always been a Stevie Wonder fan, but like, certain songs like Superstition, like that's like something you hear on like K-Earth or something like that. And you're like, all right, let's see what else is on. But then when you find out how he made the song and how he was basically inventing tech to achieve the sounds in his head.
Yeah.
And all the different parts, like, we've tried to show people that these songs have a lot more going
Just
for
by
them.
slowing it down across the
Totally.
span of an hour and just really letting every individual part shine and tell the stories and connections, it does bring more layers, especially to that type of song like a Superstition that you love in theory, but you've heard enough, you don't need to hear again. Yeah. There's a lot underneath the surface, a lot of gold there waiting to be discovered.
Yeah. I love it. So before we get into the biggest trends of this year and previous years, first question for you both. Answer clearly and quickly. Was 2024 a good year or a bad year for pop music?
I think it was a great year for pop music.
You have to say that.
I think back in the day, you'd hear this cliche all the time. What do you listen to? Like a certain type of person would be like, whatever's on the radio. And that still may be the case for a lot of people. But I think it's become the case that with your social media experiences being so like, your FYP is your FYP.
Yeah.
And it feels like a lot of other people share it, but like actually there's millions of FYPs and they're all very different. I love the idea that we have our espressos, but we also have maybe trickling down to people that weren't feeling adventurous about discovering music, like going out there and discovering it.
Yeah.
And KCRW is a kind of a wonderful middle ground. Like that was, I think, a layer before for a lot of, if the inner circle was like just the hipsters or whatever the word for it would be, like seeking out things that are hard to find and like reading NME in the 80s like I was and, taking a chance on a record with a weird album cover. A KCRW starts to expand that, and radio stations like that start to expand it, alternative music stations. And now we have a situation where the most potentially wide-reaching group of people are able to experience discovery in a way that isn't intimidating, in parallel with the big pop moments, the Brats and the
So you're
Chappell
saying
Roans.
it's the best of both worlds
It's
right
the
now.
best of both worlds.
Okay.
Thank you for summarizing my long
I like
statement.
it.
No. Listen, but I think it's so interesting you bring up NME specifically because just this week I was
We got to
listening
tell folks, the younger folks checking this out,
Oh, yeah.
NME was a music publication.
I think it was New Music Express.
New Music Express, one of the 3 big weekly British papers that obsess over brand new music in England.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a online radio station that I listen to a lot in the car, and just this week I heard a British Bengali rapper who goes by the name of Surya Sen, and I think I pronounced that right. But he had a song called "So I Just," which sampled like one of my favorite '90s rappers, Showbiz and AG, and it had an interpolated chorus from Kid Cudi's Higher from like 2014, and I was like, this is so cool. So I got online. Social media gets such a bad rap, but this is when it's amazing. I go online, the guy has like 10,000 followers or something like that, and I message him and I'm like, dude, I heard your song So I Just, it's like you're rapping over a Disclosure album, but it's like the Disclosure that I like from 2012. And I was like, this is amazing music. And he writes me back like, dude, I love that you found me, and I feel like sometimes you can use an online radio station or social media. There's so many different ways to discover music now, and we can reach out and connect with one another.
That is true. Although sometimes I'll be thinking I am discovering the newest, most underground everything. And then I go to my bougie coffee shop and their playlist is the same as my playlist.
Yes.
And I'm mad.
Your gatekeeping instinct, which we all have.
Yes.
Like that was mine.
That was
I
mine.
own it. You
I
can't
found
have it.
it.
That's a
You don't
natural
know who
thing.
that is.
You're not allowed to have
Like,
that.
I remember
coffee shop.
I was on Jaipal for years.
Yes.
People didn't know who that man was. Then he did Coachella, and I was like, God damn it.
Yes.
He's not mine anymore.
And I couldn't believe that. Coachella. Sometimes I'll be passing the Hollywood Bowl while driving down the street, and I'm like, really? They're doing the Hollywood Bowl?
Right. Yeah.
Like that used to be like the icing on the cake after
totally.
you've been around for 20 years.
Totally.
And now I'm just like, man, Gen Z is they're on it.
But that feels
bless
like the
them.
rule and
Bless
not the
them.
exception anymore. That you'll see these niche artists that actually have found a huge, like a lot
Oh
of
my
people
God.
that
we
found
had
that
a
niche.
whole chat last week about niche and how niche is just
I love that
a
conversation.
label
yeah.
one uses to propel themselves to not being niche, which is fine. Which is fine. And
I see.
let
It's
me
like a
not
pat
start
on
down
your
that
own back
path.
in a
No,
way.
I mean,
Yeah,
he's a songwriter. I'm a writer. It's always interesting to me to see writers because I've always, in my brain, Charlie XCX is still the writer. She writes for other people.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously for the last 10 years, 12 years, she's had this amazing solo career. So, it's really my thinking that's antiquated. Like, you know, in my head, she's still like sort of cool, like, you know, like a name
she
to
did
drop.
SNL.
She did
Like,
SNL.
come on.
Yeah,
Anywho,
exactly.
I
She's
could
not
talk about
niche
Charlie
anymore.
for an hour and a
Yeah.
half. But I want to start to talk about some of the biggest trends in pop right now, this year, this decade. And I want to enter into this conversation by discussing 2 lawsuits because I think they both set up.
2 lawsuits by the same person?
No, 2 separate lawsuits. 2 very different
No, I'm
lawsuits.
joking. Yeah.
And I want, because I think they both underscore and point out how the nuts and bolts of music consumption and music production are just changing. There is Drake's almost lawsuit against Kendrick and Universal, but I think
Where
the
he
more-
does not name Kendrick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just named Universal. But I think the more interesting lawsuit, and I want to start with it, is the one between not Bruno Mars and Miley Cyrus.
Yeah, this is a good one. Yeah.
So y'all have talked about this before.
Right.
You're experts on it. How would you set this case up for our audience? Because it's kind of confusing.
I can just briefly give you an
Yeah.
overview. So there's a
Yeah.
song Bruno Mars released in 2012, When I Was Your Man.
Yeah.
And then Miley Cyrus's huge hit of last year, Flowers,
Such a good
which
song.
is very
Great song.
intentionally referential to the
Yeah.
Bruno Mars song.
It's an answer to it.
It's an answer song, exactly right. An answer song historically means that you are intentionally in your song referencing either because some of the lyrics are the same, some of the melody, something about the song includes something of the song you're discussing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, famously we've got what is it? Neil Young does Southern Man,
Yeah.
and then
Sweet Home Alabama. Everybody's favorite song, right?
Everybody's favorite band, exactly. We've got the Roxanne Shante Wars and UTFO, Roxanne. So it's kind of a storytelling
Yes.
exercise,
Yes.
and it's actually related to the Drake Kendrick beef in
Oh,
that
yeah,
the
'cause-
one song begets the next.
Yeah,
and
they were all answering in that.
if you're
beef.
hearing the third song, you're going to want to go back and hear the first two. So there's a couple things going on here. One is this idea of referentialism as being part of art and creativity since the dawn of time.
Yes.
Everything is
Renaissance
built-
painters were doing this stuff.
Everything is built on
Classical
everything else.
composers were doing this stuff.
Yes.
Everyone does it.
Absolutely. And there's something also within that, which is if you hear the second song, you're going to want to hear the first one. There's not
It's
a
good for
scarcity.
both.
There's not a scarcity
The
problem.
pie expands.
Exactly right. So getting to specifically this lawsuit, what happened was Bruno Mars had a couple of co-writers with
Yes.
whom he wrote that song.
Yes.
One of them, Philip Lawrence, a piece of his publishing being one of the copyrights on a composition, is he sold to a private equity firm.
Stop right there.
Exactly important.
People don't think that happens.
Yeah.
You can sell part of the rights of
All
your
of it is
songwriting
unbundleable.
to a private equity
Right.
firm. And
All
that
of it.
means a private equity
I own
firm.
10% of this song because I worked on it. I'm now selling that to a company.
Right.
Huh.
There's the publisher's share, there's the writer's share. There's a lot of different rights and things that are ownable within a composition. So this public equity firm finds itself holding all you need, I think it's something crazy small, like 0.5% of one of the three writers' shares on that first Bruno Mars song, 2012, When I Was Your Man song.
Yes.
And what that allows them to do is kick open the door and say, in spite of nobody from any of the other
Bruno
entities,
is not concerned.
Bruno
This
has
is
nothing
not
to do with it.
Bruno has nothing to do with.
It's one of
suing
the other
Miley.
co-writers, and it's not even him.
It's a private equity
separate
firm
entity who
that's
bought
bought
the
apart.
rights.
They want money
Yeah.
and they feel like they can go
Yeah.
to Miley and get
And
it.
so this strategy is basically once you have even a small share of a song,
Yeah.
you then just try to kick up a lot of lawsuits
It's
to
it's a
what's
perfect
the strategy there?
Well, there's so many. There's about 3 or 4 separate topics within this. So I'll try and simplify as much as I have to say about it because it's a really big deal to me. I think the further, first of all, you get away from the artistry, in other words, artists upon artists. What is clear from the Miley Cyrus's Flowers song artistically, if you're Bruno Mars, I think Bruno Mars heard, hey, she's kind of referring to my song.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. The end. But I think personally that Bruno probably was like cool with it, didn't want to sue. It would be uncool to sue.
It's
Bruno
so uncool.
himself, of all people,
Yeah.
does that so often where he's
Yes.
referencing and evoking
Yes.
other songs, other
Yeah.
eras. Sting with,
Yeah.
Locked Out of Heaven, you can go
R-
through his whole
R&B and hip
catalog.
hop has this almost like as its
It's
go-to.
iterative. Yeah, it's
absolutely.
supposed to be.
So the problem happens once you get away from that inner circle of like the artists, Bruno Mars and his co-writing team. It's now owned by a private equity firm who, by definition, are trying to squeeze
Maximize
every
profits.
dollar
Yes.
out of their assets. And
Yes.
to them, the song is not a song. It's not
It's
an
an
artistic. It's an asset. So
Yeah.
turning it into an asset, that's the line that gets crossed. That to me becomes problematic.
So this is on perhaps its worst display
Mm-hmm.
in this lawsuit where someone who is not Bruno Mars, not even a Bruno Mars' songwriter, gets to sue Miley Cyrus over similarity to a Bruno Mars song.
Right.
But this is part of a larger trend in which private equity or people who aren't musicians or songwriters are buying up music rights.
Right.
You see stories about the deals. Justin Bieber sold his whole
Right.
catalog. Didn't Bob Dylan sell his a while
All of
back?
them, Queen, all these legacy
yeah.
artists.
All the legacy artists are doing this. What does that mean for the ways that I, as a layperson, get to consume music and where I get to see and hear it around?
That's an interesting question. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I was just going to say I'm not sure that it might change
Yeah.
the ability for you to access
But
the
it does feel
music.
bad. I feel like it's not
it could
good.
be dangerous. I mean, we
Right.
already know that like there was a time when you you bought a record or a CD and you had a physical copy.
You owned
Yeah.
that.
And now, as we saw, at Warner Brothers, when they like take something off of streaming and bury it deep underneath the Warner Brothers lot. I mean, like, there are versions of songs that I'm like, oh, I have that song, and I'll go and listen. I'll be like, why does it sound different? I'll find out, oh, because of the expiration on like a sample clearance or something like that. You can't get it on the iTunes store or wherever you get your music anymore. So these licenses can expire. They can hide it, in a vault somewhere. So like, I do think that as we let in these private equity firms and stuff like that, we might find our access cut off to certain material.
Yeah, and I think the worrisome thing to me is that the trend that I see that worries me is with AI, the ability to go through an entire catalog and based on some algorithm where you're looking for similarity, based on some kind of algorithmic formula, where we've already gotten beyond. And just to set the stage for what my answer right here, we have this case famously of Blurred Lines a few years ago,
which we talk a lot of.
That's the Robin Thicke and Marvin Gaye's estate
sued.
Which, by the way, estate's in a similar category as private equity firm.
We thought the estates were the bad guys, but these private equity firms make the estates look like
Also,
nothing.
I will say Marvin Gaye's estate had a point.
We can get into that.
Okay, but that's another conversation. Go ahead.
To make the point that, just to land the plane there about why that case was important, there were no direct musical similarities.
Right,
the case
the notes
was
aren't
made,
the same. The drums don't land in the same place.
The case was made that there's 8 or 9 things that are sort of similar, which the musicologist, the forensic musicologist in the case, who was like the expert witness, said these are a constellation of similarities, a made-up term meant to impress juries and judges. It's not an actual thing that all forensic musicologists agree on or musicians even know about. But the idea was the beat's kind of the same, the bass line's kind of the same, all of these kind of the sames, and it's really intended to build up an impressive document to show the judge and the jury. So they'll go, oh, well, I can't really understand this, but it looks like you're saying they're the same. That's literally what happened. They weren't the same.
It's what you just said, Sam. It's basically saying like the vibe's the same. Right. So, and I will say, I think as, he's a musician. I try to create a lot of original music for our show. Like anytime you go in there, you have something in your brain that you're chasing. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And so like, but it's definitely changed the way that even musicians talk in the
about
studio.
Their inspirations.
Like, people don't say things like, hey, let's do something that's kind of like Prince. People don't even say that.
Don't even say that name.
No, you don't say it
So
because it can lead to problems.
This is my question, and this is why I wanted to talk about these lawsuits first and this lawsuit first. As frivolous as the Bruno Mars, Miley Cyrus lawsuit seems, because you're like, oh my God, this is bonk. Are we entering a musical environment in which everything can be litigated, and does that stifle the creativity of writers and producers?
Kind of, yes.
Okay.
I do want to bookend that with, though,
Okay.
because I think we've been in that era since Blurred Lines, which is 2013, 14,
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
That my experience in the trenches as a songwriter in LA, because at that time I was in the middle of a 3-year publishing deal where I was co-writing every day. We were trying to write hits for Justin Bieber and whoever, Mariah Carey. So in that era, when I would meet with strangers, other co-writers, sometimes friends, sometimes new people, we'd be set up to write. The goal is, hey guys, write a hit song with this person today. Go to the studio and you do it. It was exactly what Diallo was saying. That became a chilling moment where suddenly what would normally have been, hey, what are you listening to? What are you vibing on?
Don't tell me anymore.
It was a moment where you had to suddenly be careful what you said and how you said it.
It was like the Tom Tom Club song "Genius of Love."
Yeah.
Like they were going to after parties and they loved Two Ways Cutie Pie. Cutie Pie, you're the reason why.
Yeah.
And they go in the studio and they're like, let's make a song like Cutie Pie. And what came out of it was Genius of Love.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to do that now because
you'd
suddenly
have to
Two
be
Way would show
careful.
and be like,
Yeah.
hey guys.
You have to be careful.
You know, and I think that's sort of lame. And I just want to build on one thing he said, which is that I think it goes back even further. The success of the Blues Brothers, that movie.
Okay.
They always say you cannot make that movie now because the music licensing would be more expensive than the movie.
Yes.
And between that and Michael Jackson, when he bought the Beatles catalog, like it sort of like heralded, there's money in music and owning the rights to it. Used to be really easy, apparently, to clear songs, before we started making TV and movies. So now it's not the case.
This is the thing. And this is what I find so puzzling about this current moment. Because on the one hand, I feel like I'm in this space of musical abundance. It feels like every song I could ever want to hear is available to me right now all the time. And yet, as soon as I talk to anyone making this stuff, they say, oh, it's getting more stifled and harder.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Well, it's harder to cut through the clutter,
That's
right?
exactly
there
right.
will be
yeah.
more songs released today
Yeah.
on Spotify.
It's like 120,000
than in the
songs.
calendar
Yeah.
year 1989.
Well, and
Yeah.
the process to get those songs written, cleared, be as creative as you want to, and making it, that's harder too.
It's easy and hard at the same time, right?
Oh,
Different things
my
are easy, different things are hard.
goodness.
You can produce much more easily. You can distribute much more easily.
My kids are music producers right now.
You can
Like,
get found. His kids are music producers.
they're literally
barely
on
teenagers.
Ableton and
I love it.
making their music.
That part's wonderful, I have
Yeah.
to say. Growing up before the age of Pro Tools and Ableton and Reason, these tools, these software tools that revolutionized, you didn't need $800 a day studio and a bunch of session musicians. We can right now sit after this show is over with that laptop and make a hit record.
Oh, absolutely.
Or I should say,
Are
we
you
can make
promising
a
me
record.
we're going to make a hit record once this
Well,
taping is over?
let me rephrase that. We can make a
I
record.
can sing.
We can make
Listen,
a record.
I'll sing.
We can make 10 minutes of content.
Forget this public radio nonsense.
Yeah. Drop the beat. Turn my headphones up. Let's
Yes.
go.
Right.
Love
It's
it.
makeable, which is a wonderful problem solved from before,
Mm-hmm.
but being heard, that problem is only getting harder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I just say, I do think that, TikTok is another wonderful. I don't have a problem with discovering new music on
No,
TikTok.
I love
In
it.
fact, one of my absolute favorite songs of the
Totally
year
love it.
was I Love the Way You Kiss Me, which was by an artist by Artemis. And I don't
Which one
think
is that?
Yeah. that song, like, it
This is what's sad about Spotify. I've heard that
I love
song
the
all
way you
year.
kiss
I don't
me.
know that person's name.
That
Now
is
I
a
know
problem.
that.
I went and listened to a lot of his songs, and
It's a him.
well, here's the thing. I think the rumor online is that his girlfriend wrote that song. She's the one who sings on it, and he layers his vocal underneath hers.
Oh.
And you listen to a lot of his other
She
songs.
better get half if they break up.
Oh no, I don't think she did. We'll have to do the research.
Never trust a man.
When I looked it up in the summer, like she was pissed and
I'd
was
be
not
pissed
getting any
too.
money off of it. But anyway,
That said,
but that song is
okay.
amazing.
Yes. Hey, thank y'all so much for checking out the show. If you like what you're hearing, what you're seeing, I'm going to tell you a little secret. There's more. There is a newsletter that goes along with this show, and I write it myself every week. I talk about what I'm watching, what I'm reading, what I'm loving, what I'm hating. There's the occasional personal essay. There are recommendations. It's pretty good, if I do say so myself. I would love to send my newsletter to you every week. You can sign up for it. Just go to kcrw.com/Sam Sanders. It's kcrw.com/Sam Sanders. Sign up for the newsletter. From my heart to yours. I'll see you in the inboxes. Let's talk about this other lawsuit that I have been obsessed with. And this is the one between, and it's not even a full lawsuit yet. It's an almost lawsuit. But talk me through it. It's between Drake and Universal Records.
Right.
And this is a response to Kendrick's mega hit from this past year, Not Like Us. In this potential suit, Drake and his team claim that Universal cut royalty rates for the song by 30% in return for Spotify recommending the song more. It also alleges that bots were created to constantly stream Not Like Us and make it a hit. It also says that sometimes when you would ask a voice assistant on a streaming app to play Drake, they would just play Kendrick, Not Like Us.
Which is funny.
It's funny.
Yeah.
And so I do not want to talk about who won the beef because that literally was last week's conversation.
Right.
But I want to talk about the specifics.
And the jury is so out on that one still.
But I do want to talk about the specifics of these allegations and what they say about the state of streaming, because I think most of us think that when you go to your app to stream your music, the algorithm has been set to who you are and the computer program has programmed itself and it's just giving you stuff.
Yeah.
But this potential lawsuit is saying, oh, that can be played with. That can be
what's
toyed
that
with.
Onion meme? Like the worst person in the world, suddenly says something you agree with. There's like, not to say Drake is the worst person in the world, but I think there's obviously a lot going on in what you said. And,
There's a lot going on
And
there.
neither of us are lawyers, by the way, either. So the legality,
Yeah.
aside.
Yeah.
I think the idea that someone's raising their hand and saying, hey, there's some stuff going on that needs to be discussed, I'm all behind.
Right.
Yeah.
There's definitely stuff that
Something's
needs to be
going on.
looked at.
These
Yeah.
apps have a lot of moving parts that we don't see moving.
Yeah. Some of them I can speak to better than others. I think there's one in particular that I read a good article in Billboard. I'm a fan of this writer, Kristen Robinson, who writes on publishing and legal stuff. And she pointed out with that 30% Spotify allegation in particular, there just is a tool in Spotify. It's kind of it is payola. It's essentially Spotify saying, listen, and I'm oversimplifying this tool, which I haven't personally used, but you can basically promote a song in exchange for Spotify
paying you
less, which is basically kind of payola.
We gotta specify.
That's pretty much
say
payola.
This clearly for people checking this episode out. That's kind of a big deal.
It's kind of a big
deal. So right now, Spotify, or for a long time, Spotify would compensate spins at an equal level. Yeah. Your song gets spun this much, we pay you out this much. But I guess a year or two ago, they said, if you let us lower the rate of what we pay you for these spins, we'll
give you
promote
more
you.
Which isn't an industry secret. Like, that's available to me. I'm an artist called Luxury with 2 X's on Spotify. Go check me out. LUXXURY.
But here's what I'm saying. How should I feel about that?
But it's
as a consumer of music.
Yeah,
I think it pisses me off.
You should be suspicious. And we were talking about Espresso earlier. That's a song a lot of people accused of, like, how come I'm hearing it everywhere all the time?
Listen,
we love that song, but it was also subject to accusation. They're silly on purpose, which is why she's
Sabrina
genius.
lyric was that last song on the album. Don't smile because it happened, baby. Cry because it's over.
Come on now.
Anywho, go ahead.
Right.
So this is happening. We've used the word payola for it. It's kind of an open secret. I think about it and get mad.
Yeah.
Should I get mad? Am I being a little prissy about this?
No, I'm with you. I think there's reason to feel like something that felt authentic, organic, real.
Yes.
Behind the scenes wasn't. There's no reason. The cynical view would be like, that's life, get over it. But I still think you're allowed to be mad at things that are unfair in life or not true or like being lied to, being gaslit. I think you're allowed to be mad at.
2022.
So I think if that's what I hear when you say that. I think you're right to have the wool, the wizard, you see behind the curtain, there's a guy pulling the strings.
Are you calling Spotify the Wizard of Oz?
A little bit. It's that time of year.
Can I also just say that I think that the payola thing is really interesting to me because it almost seems like, so are we doing this for all the big artists? Like, is this something that everybody is doing? Like, I've tended to trust the Spotify algorithm, but now I'm starting to wonder, like, okay, so I like the Justice album, where all these other random electronic artists that it was feeding me, like, where are those artists coming from? Are those Universal Music Group artists? That to me was like sort of the.
I think the short answer is more often than you would expect. You're being shown things for a reason, for a financially driven reason.
So then, as an avid consumer of music, how do I, in my consumption, fight back against that?
I don't know that I have an answer for that. I think. Yeah, I don't have an answer other than
stream KCRW.
Yeah, stream KCRW is a good answer. Go with that. I
think, believe it or not, I think Eclectic 24 is a good answer.
We're also talking about the bigger playlists too. We're talking about the top 40 playlists. We're talking about the big. I think there's bajillions of great playlists, including our one song interpolation playlist on Spotify.
Hey.
Okay, I wasn't gonna go there.
You can cut whatever you want to cut, or you can keep it. Hey,
we're keeping
it's a great playlist, but there's more playlists like that are personally curated based on one song at a time decisions, painstakingly derived over time, which is, I think most playlists are like that outside of the big ones.
Yeah. Thank y'all for doing Law School 101 with me, because I wanted to set this up because I feel like we can't have a conversation about what we liked and didn't like sonically about music right now without talking about the ways the nuts and bolts of this industry are changing. And I think when I look at these two lawsuits in conjunction, the Drake Universal suit, the Miley Bruno suit, it just reminds me that, like, my consumption of music on my devices seems so seamless and pure.
Right.
But in actuality, there are a lot of fingers in that pot.
There's still manipulation by these big corporations.
And there was manipulation happening, and there always has been. Payola existed
is a 50s
in the 50s,
expression.
and it's still here now. So don't forget that is what I'm saying. Anywho, with that, let's close the law books and just talk about...
With these three non-lawyers convincing about law.
I think we sounded pretty great to be non-lawyers.
I was impressed with us, too.
Yes. I want to talk about two big trends in music that I was kind of waiting to have more fireworks around them, and then they didn't.
Oh,
so y'all
I hate that feeling.
Y'all pick. let's talk about how AI was going to ruin music this year and kind of it didn't. Or let's talk about this much stoked battle between country and hip hop and who was going to win. And in actuality, both won because the biggest song of the year was a country song sung by a black man sampling Jaquan's Tipsy. I feel like at the end of 2023,
Yeah.
everyone was saying AI is here and it's going to ruin music. And there were a few AI tracks that sounded surprisingly like Drake and The Weeknd.
You're talking about Ghostwriter. I think that was his name. Ghost. I've already forgotten.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've already forgotten.
Yeah, I've already forgotten.
But for a second,
But by the way,
did
can
the
we just
fake
say
Drake.
that Drake Weekend AI song was amazing?
it was a banger.
It was the song that we wanted them to
banger.
release.
I was like, release 5 of these.
Yeah.
But that said, we were all set up to fear what this could do. And then I look back on this year, I haven't thought about AI in music at all.
But this is the story
Ooh.
of tech tools throughout like history. There's
Say more.
always this sort of fear thing. It's coming, it's going to eat your jobs. And there are definitely sectors for whom that is true.
Yeah, I'm
no
a little
doubt.
bit, you know, so my primary job is as a TV writer and some features. But, you know, I put my name, there was a database. It was reported that AI was being fed all these scripts from certain shows. I put my name in there, and sure enough, like a couple of things that I did on Silicon Valley popped up. You know, like, so I was just like, oh wow, so they're really training
They're slurping
AI
everything.
on our. So I think it's going to affect different industries in different ways.
But it hasn't hit music yet. Too hard.
Not too hard. We had King Wallonius on our show. He's the guy who famously created BBL Drizzy,
Which was an AI song.
which was an AI song.
And a very good
it
one.
came with that cover,
Yeah.
and it
Very good
sounded
one.
good, and it was funny.
It was a bop. It wasn't
and
long
that
enough.
was him
It
typing.
wasn't long enough.
That was him typing a text prompt into Udio, which is one of the two. Udio and Suno are the two companies being sued for I think $500 million by the industry right now. But these are tools you can type an idea into, and it will spit out a song.
Did it spit out that entire BBL Drizzy song?
There are two things he put in: his lyrics and a description of what he wanted it to sound like.
Yes,
and then they gave him lots of choices. He had I think he told us that he pulled from, there were a few earlier versions that he didn't like as much, and then he got on the one that we all know.
exactly.
And that was the one.
Yeah.
So that is...
Just want to be clear what he actually had to do.
For sure.
We're trying to support, and by the way, it's important because support his creative role in it.
Exactly.
Because interestingly, going back to, okay, again, we're not lawyers, but the legal precedent that song interestingly set for AI music is that King Wallonius is listed as the songwriter, but nobody owns, the music is in the public domain. So usually you have two copyrights associated with any song.
Yeah.
It's who owns the masters, it's usually the record label, and who owns the publishing, right? It's usually, those are two things that somebody owns. But in this case, we learned for AI music based on King Wallonius's BBL Drizzy as the precedent case that King Wallonius gets a publishing credit, but nobody can say they own the music.
Right, which
very
is one of the
interesting.
reasons why Metro Boomin was able to just come along, sample it, and do what he did with it.
Yeah. So then, if the only AI song that mattered to me this year was BBL Drizzy, we all kind of liked it. But there's also these pending lawsuits against these folks doing it. How big of a threat will AI be to the industry going forward, and how much should I worry about
I
it?
think you were right to set this up as this is the year. I literally in January spoke at the Copyright Society of America as the musician guest in a room full of lawyers.
Shut the city down that weekend.
They asked that same question.
Party animals.
Really?
Basically, I was there to sort of say to be the musician saying, here's what my life is like. Here is how AI may or may not affect me. And on this panel I was on, I was sort of begging, this is prior to BBL Drizzy, I was basically saying, hey, can you guys, in whatever capacity you work in publishing, in record labels, can you make sure it's not as hard to clear AI, to use AI as it has been to clear samples, as it has been historically, because all of these art forms, hip hop, electronic music that use samples, it's harder than it should be because it's complicated to use the work.
Yes.
That was my plea in this room full of lawyers. I'm not sure that's why BBL Drizzy landed the way it did. My point being, at the top of the year, we thought, as you mentioned in your setup, that this would be, the whole year would be only about AI destroying everyone's music industry experience or creative experience. And here we are at the end. I'm not sure that it has. And just one really quick thing I want to say, or two really quick things. One, I've used the tool, one of those two products, Suno, to just experiment. And I've uploaded unfinished work of my own, a bass line and a drum beat, and it finished the song in a pretty cool way. I was impressed, but did it change my view of how I'm going to make music? Probably not. I may use this as a clever tool, but it's more of a novelty now,
All right.
at this moment now.
Okay.
So that's my quick answer.
I like that. So I don't need to worry too much about AI and music just yet.
Today we don't. Next
Today.
year, it's too soon to
Okay.
say.
Okay.
Too soon to say.
All right.
I think verdict's
Any other
out.
AI thoughts?
I think verdict's out. Yeah, maybe just because I see how it's wreaking havoc in my regular day job. It just seems like, a lot of, from set deck to just everything. It's just, yeah, I feel like the verdict's still out. I think we're still learning where the real impact is going to be.
One quick thing I will say though is that we did an episode on one song. We did an episode about with John Benjamin as our guest about Steely Dan. And in that episode, we talked about the song Peg has this, sounds like a saxophone, but it's actually a lyricon.
Yes.
What's the lyricon?
The lyricon is a wind instrument. I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
It's basically a controller, like a MIDI controller, where you play something on it, but the sound isn't coming out of it. It's being generated by basically a synthesizer. So you can change the sound. So
Okay.
Tom Scott is the name of this incredible sax player from early 70s LA scene. He played with Joni Mitchell. The long story short of it though is that we uploaded this video and I titled it "What the hell is a lyricon?" Later, a few weeks later, I searched on Tom Scott because I wanted to find out, I guess, his birth date or something minor. I searched Tom Scott on Google. The first result, at the top it's got that AI, that chat GPT thing. The first result is Tom Scott wrote "What the hell is a lyricon?" And next to it is the video that I posted, which is titled that.
Oh, wow.
Google now incorrectly thinks that my video title from our conversation is Tom Scott's song title. It's dead wrong. But the first result you'll get. That to me said so much about the intelligence of AI. They're scraping, but there's nothing inherently in the AI algorithm that can differentiate between what someone has said, which may or may not be true, and the actual
and someone's life mission.
Yeah.
Right.
AI has muscle. It does not yet have a soul.
May never.
I hope never.
Yeah.
Listen, if AI comes for
You don't want them.
podcasters, I'm out.
Yeah.
I don't
By the
want
way, you
that.
probably do know Tom Scott's music in a lot of songs. He's the saxophone they sampled for Troy. They reminisce over you in P. Robinson. That's Tom Scott.
Okay. Let's saxophone segue into my next big question for y'all. I remember taping an episode of a podcast last summer all about the coming freight train of country music overtaking the pop charts. It was going to dethrone hip hop, and we were kind of getting prepared for like a big battle and a big culture war that was
before
going to
Cowboy
be
Carter?
Yeah, before Cowboy Carter. That was going to be kind of all about race and the very racialized history of country music.
Yeah.
And I was prepared for that. But then a funny thing happened this year. We saw how the CMAs snubbed Beyonce.
Yeah.
But the bigger story was that the biggest song of the year, 18 weeks #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, was Shaboozie's A Bar Song, Tipsy. So not just the biggest country song of the year, the biggest song of the year, and the second longest running #1 hit in like recent history.
Yeah.
Interestingly tied with Lil Nas X's
Yes,
Country Road. Old
exactly.
Country Road, right.
Another country song written and performed by a black man.
Right.
Yeah.
But seeing this happen with a song that sampled the hip hop classic Tipsy, interpolated the hip hop song Tipsy, is it fair to say that whatever battle over the soul of country or hip hop that I thought was going to be waged, it's already been won, and like Shaboozie is the future, and this world in which hip hop and country and all other kinds of sounds constantly come together, that's just it? That's just
I'd like
it?
to think so. I'd like to think that genre education is becoming more widespread. The idea that we use this word genre and
You sound like Beyonce.
I think we are
Genre
now.
is a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. I think the understanding, personally, like when you really investigate what does genre mean, its history comes from, well, who's making the music and who's buying it, not what does it sound like.
And the American history of genre is racialized.
And country music is
And
racialized.
Country music
sexualized.
before-
If I may, I think that and I might get in trouble for saying this, but I think
can't
that cut these mics off. I think that there's a little bit of that thing where it is easier sometimes for black men to connect with white rural audiences than even black women.
I remember when Nelly was making country songs when I was in high school in Texas.
Yes.
And they ate it up. Nelly and Tim McGraw were doing a goodwill tour across the country 15 years ago.
By the way, when Shabuzi, who is an artist who hasn't already made a name for himself in R&B or hip hop or whatever you want to call it, like, when they hear a song on the radio, then they find out he's a black guy, they're like, oh, I like that song. I think with Beyonce, it might have been a little bit more like, she's trying to encroach on our, genre over here. You know what I mean? So there's some other things from gender to how you already think of an artist. There's some other things that might have been in play there. But I from the second I saw Shabuzi, or I saw him perform it with the Grammys or whatever that was, with the full bar, then he brought Jaquan out. Like, I was loving
come
it.
on.
That was the BET Awards, actually. That was a great award.
But this is a thing that I find so interesting whenever I think about country and pop and hip hop and race. I will have one conversation in LA about all of these things, and then I'll go home to South Texas.
You always need a rural connect. You always need someplace to go back.
I go to San Antonio. The bar you're in is Latino and white and black. They jump back and forth between hip hop and country.
Hip-hop is so big,
and then they play Shabuzi 5 times and everyone loves it.
Then they play Morgan Wallen.
And it's like then these other country artists who we kind of label as like the country white boys, all of their beats are trap beats.
Yeah, they're all 808s.
Every Morgan Wallen beat has a trap beat under it.
It's produced the same way.
Yeah, and so this is my like bigger kind of conclusive thought about 2024 and the great music genre / race war that maybe wasn't. It's like most of the country is maybe just listening to all of it.
Genre is
and
not
all
about
of
music.
It is blending into itself anyway.
Genre is really not about music at the core.
Talk more about it.
That's just what you're saying, just supporting what you're saying. This idea of what genre is history, genre evolves. I mean, think about it. Like, think of any genre. It doesn't sound the same now as it did 50 years ago or 20 years ago. It has components that may remain similar. You may find similarities in chord changes and maybe, instrumentation. But for the most part, what we're talking about here is how country at its core, it's elusive to put your finger on like what makes something country. It's really up to the ears of the listener, but really the ears and eyes and decisions of the gatekeepers.
Well, it's that.
And the gatekeepers haven't kept up with the listeners.
That's true.
Is what we've seen this year.
I want to take a step further. Nowadays, it seems like if you were to play like, an instrumental Taylor Swift or an instrumental Beyonce or an instrumental
that's so well put. Yes, you can place it almost anywhere. It would be hard
to figure out, but then the second you know what the artist looks
that's
like,
exactly it.
That's when you decide.
That's perfectly put.
It's Taylor Swift. It's a
not
pop song.
Music.
It's Beyonce. It's
R&B.
not
baked into the music what genre it is.
Yes.
The genre is determined by who's singing.
It's who is singing it.
Yeah.
And in a sense, who's buying it. And that's part of where this problem comes in with the country music associations.
Exactly. Which is why
who's playing
my
on the radio.
favorite genre is pop, because all pop means as a genre is it popular?
Yeah.
That's
a lot of people
it's
like
a
it.
catch-all.
And it's ingesting everything. Pop is all about ingesting every trend, every genre, every era.
Yeah. I feel like I can't leave this country hip-hop conversation and not give a final thought on what's been happening to Beyonce and Cowboy Carter and awards being given to her or nominations being given to her or not. Yeah. I have stopped waiting for the industry to acknowledge her merit in the way it should, but I wonder where y'all sit with that.
Well, first off, according to Spotify, Cowboy Carter was my most listened to album this year. I do share with my family. My kids listen to stuff. My wife listens to stuff. It's such a cool, interesting album. I didn't even believe it at first, but this was the young man who pointed out to me that somebody clearly played Born Slippy.
Yeah.
Underworld, which is another one of my favorite electronic music classics. Like, she was sampling from so much, and yet it all came back to the banjo, and I really appreciated that album.
Yeah, and you can't say banjo without me, and I've said this on a microphone before.
Yeah.
The banjo is the basis and root of country music. The banjo came from Africa. And before country music was called country music, that type of America music in the South was made in integrated dance halls and juke joints. And we did not end up with a country music that was specifically white until labels wanted to sell this music. And they could only sell stuff to white people if it was made just by white people. The reason country music is racialized, was for profit.
Yep.
Steps off soapbox.
I happened to be in Tennessee in April. My point being that I went to the Country Music Hall of Fame. It's so good. It's a great museum.
Okay.
And I learned so much there. And to your point, well, I remember, as you said, that I flashed on in this exhibit, they show you this moment before it happens, before when country music is just the music that's being made, sort of hillbilly music, whatever.
Yeah.
There's a moment where the same like record label has records they put out with black artists, and they're called race records.
Records,
and they put out records by white artists, and they're called country records. But musically, it's the same.
It's the same
label.
because they were making this stuff the same. People forget. It's like we have this idea in America that everything was fully segregated until like Martin Luther King. But people would sneak around to drink and make music, and they would do it integratedly. Anywho, gosh, okay, we are really off the mark, but I want to move on.
This is the good stuff. I love this conversation.
Okay. I want to just ask y'all quickly for your big hits and misses of the year. Just a few questions. What was the most slept on music or artist of this year who deserved more love but didn't get it?
Okay, I'm going to preface this by saying it's not slept on.
Okay.
But I think between...
So then you don't want to answer the question.
No, but I think possibly one of the best albums of his career, Tyler, the Creator, Chromacopia. I don't hear enough people talking about it.
But it moved. It moved
it's
units.
moving, absolutely.
It's selling.
But I feel like in a lot of the people talking about the year that was, there's some albums and rappers and R&B artists who are getting mentioned a lot. But like, give props to Chromacopia. Like, I just feel like,
and he has all the marching bands playing his song.
Yeah,
this is a great
the
thing.
The whole album feels like a coherent thought in a way that I feel like I've been waiting for the definitive for Tyler just to seize the moment. It sounds a little bit ridiculous.
And I think there's like 2 Doechii features.
Dude, well, okay, so she's 2025 to me. I feel like she's completely ramped. She's absolutely ready.
Yeah.
That Tiny Desk, baby.
Yeah.
Anywho,
and the Colbert was great too. Yeah.
I mean, like she's got it. We love
people across the age range can get down with somebody who is rapping and funny and deep and can choreograph herself. Like she's next level.
Yeah. Okay. So those are yours. Most slept on.
I may have to punt.
Okay.
Yeah. Just my brain is total blank right now.
And this is my most slept on for the last maybe 4 years. I discovered her during pandemic and have latched deeply for years now. Remy Wolf is the truth.
That's cool. That's a cool call.
One of the most affecting songwriters I've experienced in the last decade. She has this song that I love this year called Alone in Miami. And it's referencing like 90s guitar rock, really emotionally laden. But she writes this song about loneliness by recounting her experience hopping from party to party in Miami at like Art Basel. And it's this moment that I have never experienced myself and never will. But by the end of the song, I'm like, I feel the exact same way she does. Just the gift of songwriting.
That's the connection, the emotional connection. That's beautiful.
And she can play that guitar and she can sing. She has a cover of Frank Ocean's Pink and White that's perfect. Oh. Remy, I love you. Remy, if you're listening, come in the studio.
Come on the show.
Let's hang out.
Sam Sanders wants you here.
We'll circle back to you. Any slept on?
You know, the music that I really resonated with the most this year, in other words, what I listened to and experienced this year on my couch, like after a long day, to be honest with you, it wasn't contemporary music. I have been in a 3-year now, like, dub obsession, like 1969 to 1975 Jamaican reggae. So that is kind of all I have been doing.
I like that.
Most of my year when I wasn't working on our show and going deep into our investigations of the various songs we talked about, or listening to Brat, because it was a Brat summer even for me.
Yeah. Brat fall too. Brat winter, baby.
I spent a lot of time on my couch listening to, let's see, who are some of my favorites this year? I got this incredible 1982 Horace Andy record called Dance Hall Style, which has the original version of some of the songs you later heard him do on Massive Attack Records. I spent a lot of time listening to Lee Scratch Perry probably every day this year. I listened to a 1975 to 1977 Lee Scratch Perry production. A lot of Joe Gibbs, a lot of King Tubby. It was a big, and Studio One. A lot of great Studio One reissues. I was really stuck in a place I've never been, in a time that I was not alive for most of this year.
All right. I like that. Worst music trend of 24.
I mean, listen, from a musician's standpoint, the trend of trying to be heard didn't get better. The trend of competing with other musicians for space and needing to do TikToks and needing to do all things that aren't actually creative. I think it's a little bit the status quo now. Like to say that it's a 2024 trend, maybe sort of, I mean, I'm late to that trend in talking about it, but I think it's an important one to discuss. We're talking about the top 1% of the top 1% of musicians in a lot of ways, and even the ones that aren't the Taylor Swifts wealth-wise. A lot of the things that you end up hearing and end up getting shared, and God bless them, like a lot of times they are genuine feminine nominons, right?
You got
in
it.
the case. Thank you.
Chapel,
In the case of Chapel, what a great story. I'm so proud of her. I think Dan Nigro is a great producer. He was behind Olivia as well. So I think I'm sort of maybe flipping your question. I'm excited for these breakout stars that are artistry first. I'd put Charlie in that category. Maybe Beyonce's in that category too. I think she's trying a lot of exciting things. So I am kind of flipping your question. I like these trends.
Okay, good.
Worst musical trend is finding out that nobody in your playlist is safe.
What do you mean?
I'm just saying, like every couple of months, it was just like so and so has been accused of, and I just feel like at what point will
that's not a good
anybody-
trend. I'll co-sign that trend. Being
Yeah, I mean,
good.
like happy that people are getting caught for bad things, but also you're just like, damn, pretty soon. It's
You've still got people quietly listening to R. Kelly's remix to Ignition. People haven't
which
even
I
gotten
don't
that
get.
far
I
yet.
don't understand that. But because I will delete your songs out of my Serato in a heartbeat.
Oh, you have to. You have to.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've skipped some concerts because the artist had some dubious questions. I'm like, let me not be seen out there like that.
Yeah.
Anywho.
Yeah, unfortunately, we know that the powerful think that they're often above the law, and sometimes the Supreme Court decides that they are. But at the end of the day, we have to, I just like to think that the person who, got my feet moving, that means dance kids. I like to think that they can be good people too,
Usually not.
If I could just build on what you just said, because legally, I actually think my answer to your question is it's not going to be necessarily about artistic trends, but I think what we were discussing earlier, this PE trend, when you add that to what's the private equity getting involved in buying up songs and looking for reasons that something in their catalog might be like something else so that they can sue it. To me, the coming trend that I'm worried about potentially is that being merged with AI, making that role easier. The ability to go through their catalog of stuff they bought and slurp it up and find something and slurp up everything else and find matches.
Gotcha.
And be like,
Yeah,
hey,
that's gonna be
we
bad.
have 0.2% of this guy's songwriting credit on this song, and it sounds a little bit like this over here. That's enough to open a door to a lawsuit. And when you have that much money, there's nothing preventing you from trying that out.
So the trend is more lawsuits.
The trend of the lawsuits of copyright infringement over musical similarity, to me, is the bothersome trend. I don't like this trend.
It's going to increase.
And it
and
doesn't
Because
go
our
away in
human ears might
2025.
not have
like
heard the
it.
It doesn't go
similarities,
away.
but the AI will figure out the similarities and it'll be like, oh, which is fine. To go back to our Steely
It's
Dan
the sample
episode,
snitching by AI.
there were some times, and I know that we don't always agree on this, there were some things that, Steely Dan played, and you can argue that they borrowed from this jazz artist, who died penniless or whatever.
Yeah.
And in those cases, I'm like, let's make sure that these artists, get paid when
compensated.
there are some real similarities there. But I think what you'd say is that the flip side is that, some of our artists who we love, might have even unintentionally borrowed a melody or something that then gets caught by AI, and then all of a sudden they got to pay.
And to bring it back to Beyonce, if I may, there's an interesting thing.
Don't even ask.
I knew I'd get
You don't have to ask if I may.
You sat so forward in your
If
seat
I may,
so quickly.
is the sky blue? Do waves wave?
Really?
You're allowed.
A super interesting thing she did on Renaissance and Cowboy Carter is that there's sampling, there's interpolations, there's covers,
She cleared like over
there's
100 for
references.
Renaissance,
There
right?
are so many ways that she has made allusion or reference or made use of other musics in her music in a way that I love. To me, that is creativity. And because it's her, Beyonce's voice and storytelling on top of it, and coordinating it and curating it.
Yes.
So this is very her, and it's two incredible records.
Yes.
The interesting thing that I am on the fence about is that in her liner notes and in the credits, she
It's
has
like a CVS receipt.
It's like a
There's so
CVS receipt.
much.
She is crediting everything,
She's extra cautious,
which is
and I
out
think
of
it's a fear of
caution.
litigation.
It's a fear of litigation. It's out of caution, and it does two things. One, it's a shout out in a wonderful way, so that some of the lesser known artists have visibility. The flip side of it, though, on the creative side, on the music making side is, oh, wait a second, do we all need to start doing this too potentially? And without the Beyonce budget behind us,
Can we clear all this?
can we clear all this? Does it open it up to making it harder
Yeah.
to make this kind of music?
Yeah. I like it because it's rare to have Beyonce sit down and have a conversation about Renaissance and what musically came into it and how she put it together.
Yeah.
True.
So the only way to piece through how she built it is through the crediting.
Right.
So then I can go and say, oh, this is where she was
There,
going.
there,
I
there,
love
there,
that.
there are artists who are credited on "Break My Soul" who we talked about on the show. It was like, and I'm telling everybody,
Yeah.
and we're like, do you think that she credited the people who did everybody because
Probably.
they thought they might show up and
Yeah.
just be like,
yeah. Over credit.
Yeah.
Over credit.
I love that, like, all roads end up leading to Beyonce in this conversation.
I think that's
And the
appropriate.
courtrooms.
Yes, yes. That is my last big trend question for this year in pop, but I do want to close with a game.
Oh wow, okay.
We
I know
have
we're getting the game.
all established that we maybe don't care for the Grammys too much. And so what I've been doing in my head in Grammy season, just to not think about those awards and how they might get it wrong, I just make up my own little awards that I want to give out to artists that I like, and I call them the Sammies. And what I've been doing recently is having my favorite artist face off against themselves.
Oh wow.
So I take an artist I like,
Oh, okay.
I take two of their best albums and say, well, which one wins?
Ooh, I love this.
Like
okay.
a sports thing, like the final four. I'm not a sports guy. Isn't that like
A
a sports
bracket.
thing? Bracket. That's the word. I'm
Let's
looking for.
call it a bracket.
Let's call it a bracket.
But it's a bracket
Okay.
for artists, and the artists are in bracketology with themselves.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Can we play this game?
I love it.
Let's
It's
do it.
rapid fire.
Okay.
So you just pick one and we move on. No explanation.
Yep.
No takebacks. We just.
No takebacks. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm in trouble because I'm Mr. Takeback.
You are Caveat Jones.
Yeah.
sometimes.
I will name an artist, two of my favorite albums of theirs, and you pick one.
Okay.
You got to stand by it.
I'm ready.
Okay. Beyonce, Cowboy Carter, or Renaissance?
Renaissance.
Renaissance.
I got there first.
Right answer.
That's the
right
right
answer.
answer.
Right
It's
answer.
not- we're not competing against.
Oh,
each other.
okay.
Kendrick Lamar, To Pimp a Butterfly, or Damn?
T-Pap.
Damn.
T-Pap. T-Pap.
My
Too long.
son, my 13-year-old
I said T-Pap first.
would agree with you. I like Damn more.
Yeah.
I like Damn.
It's because of my son, actually.
Yeah.
It's his favorite album.
Okay. SZA, SOS, or CTRL?
SOS.
CTRL.
You like the long ones. CTRL gets in and gets out.
Yeah,
and move on with your life.
kind of perfect. In my
I love it so much.
All right.
Billie Eilish, Hit Me Hard and Soft, or When We Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go?
Hard and soft.
What he said.
I'm getting so many faces
We're
from you.
Fighting in the parking lot.
We
We are
so
fighting in the parking
many
lot.
shocked
Yeah.
emojis
Yeah.
coming out of you.
Which one for you?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know her albums that well.
Get out of
Oh,
my
I'm
sorry. Which is worse?
Honesty
Disagreement
policy.
or indifference?
I'm going to say When We Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? Because on one of the songs, one of the percussive instruments is just the sound of the crosswalk beep.
You said no rationale.
I know, but it's but I have the laptop.
Once again, the powerful don't think the laws apply to them.
Unbelievable.
This is Oz, and I'm the wizard. I'm kidding. Just a few more. Stevie Wonder,
Yeah.
Songs in the Key of Life,
Okay.
or Talking Book.
I
Key
knew
of
you were gonna
Life.
put those two together.
It's Key of
I
Life.
knew you were gonna put those two
It's
together.
Key of Life. Don't be contrarian. It's Key of Life.
I do love Talking Book though.
It's Key of Life.
Key of Life is fine.
Okay.
Key of Life is fine.
Both of you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Taylor Swift, 1989, or Red?
I recuse myself from this one.
I'll probably
Why?
do 1989.
I'm just not a Swiftie.
Okay. 89 is real good.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Real
the
good.
one I know.
It's real
Yeah,
good.
Okay.
Last one for y'all. Charlie XCX. Brat
Okay.
or Brat, and it's completely different, but also still Brat.
It's Brat by far. Yeah, by far.
How are we so morally opposed?
Did you say morally opposed?
Morally opposed.
Ethically.
Ethically, morally.
One of us has virtue,
You
the
guys,
other
you
does
guys
not.
can't hang.
What about you?
I'd probably say Brad too, but I don't know
Okay.
yeah.
I'm gonna
This is I have a bias
Wait.
because I'm a producer and I did my own like white label only Brat remix. So when I heard the real ones, I'm like, mine was better. So that's where that's coming
Okay.
from. I'll be honest.
I
with
will say Brat, and it's completely different, but also still Brat wins for me because one of the songs has Caroline Polachek on
Yeah.
it,
Oh,
and I love her.
I do love her.
And she has lyrics about free bleeding.
About what?
Free bleeding.
I don't know what this
Look
is.
it up.
Okay.
It's great.
You know what it is?
It's so,
No.
We don't know what free bleeding.
I'll tell you guys after.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Anywho, that one does it for me.
Is that like with leeches or something?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No. I'm going to tell you.
I love that you went literal.
I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you after the. I'm going to tell you.
I have a
I'm going
feeling.
to tell you.
Yeah.
We have had a journey and a ride.
Yes, we have.
I am so grateful to have had this chat. Thanks for nerding out on music with me.
That was fun. Thank you for having us.
Tell folks once more who you are and where to find you.
I'm Diallo,
I'm Luxury.
and we have a podcast called One Song. You can find it anywhere you find your podcasts. And I think on social media.
I'm Luxury with 2 X's, LUXXURY.
And I'm at Diallo, Diallo.
And I'm so honored to have had you both here. Thanks, everyone out there, for checking out this show. Come back next week. There might be even more talk of music. Bye.
Take care.